She fled her own Apache village in the dead of night, alone, on a stolen horse, and by morning, her whole people were calling her a traitor and a shame. Only one man in the world knew the true reason she ran, and he was a Lakota warrior, and he was the very enemy they would all assume she had run to. Her name was Izel. She was Apache, the daughter of a respected family, and she had just done the most damning thing an Apache woman could do on the eve of a peace council. She had slipped out of her village in the dark and ridden hard for the Lakota camp across the borderland, and when her people woke and found her gone, the story told itself without anyone having to say a word. The shameless daughter had run off to her enemy lover the night before the two peoples were to make peace. Part of that story was even true. There was a Lakota warrior, and his name was Tokala, and Izel did love him, secretly. A love built over 3 peace gatherings, and hidden from both their peoples, because it could never be allowed. So when Izel fled to the Lakota camp, everyone assumed they understood. A forbidden love, a foolish woman, throwing away her honor for an enemy man. But that was not why Izel ran. That was the surface, the easy story, the one that hid the real one. Izel had not fled her village for love. She had fled it to stop a massacre, and the only person in the world she could tell was the one man both peoples would assume was the reason, which made the truth almost impossible to prove and almost certain to get her killed by one side or the other. When Izel rode into the Lakota camp at dawn, breathless and gray-faced, and found Tokala, the first thing she said was not a word of love. "They are going to kill you," Izel said. "All of you. At the council, under the flag of truce. I came to warn you. Tokala, listen to me. We have until the council meets, and almost no one will believe how I know. Hold on to that. A woman who fled her own people in the dark, branded a traitor for love, when the truth is, she ran to prevent a slaughter. The buried truth in this story is not a secret romance. The romance is the cover. The buried truth is far more dangerous, and telling it will cost Izel everything, and only the Lakota warrior who loves her will believe her. How that truth came out, and what it cost, is the whole of this story. It begins with a flight in the dark, and a warning no one wants to hear. To understand the flight, you have to understand the love that came before it, because the love is what put Izel in the place to learn the terrible thing she learned. Izel and Tokala had met at the peace gatherings, the careful meetings where the two displaced nations, Apache and Lakota, crowded into the same borderland, had begun trying to find a way to share the country instead of bleeding over it. Izel's family was respected, and she attended the gatherings. Tokala was a warrior, trusted by his Lakota leaders, and he attended too. And across 3 of those gatherings, against every rule of both their peoples, the Apache woman and the Lakota warrior had found each other and fallen quietly, deeply, hopelessly in love. They had kept it secret because they had no choice. The stolen moments were small and few, a few words traded over a blanket of goods while pretending to haggle. A long look held a heartbeat too long across the crowded trading ground. Once, a whole hour together at the dark edge of a gathering, talking low in their patched-together speech about everything and nothing, an hour Izel had lived on for the months between one gathering and the next. It was not much to build a love on, but trapped love grows in thin soil the way desert flowers do, fierce and bright, precisely because the ground gives them so little, and what grew between Izel and Tokala in those few stolen hours was stronger than many a love that has every freedom and all the time in the world. A Lakota and an Apache could not court openly, not with their peoples still half wary of each other, not with the fragile peace not yet made. So Izel and Tokala had met in stolen moments at the edges of the gatherings, had learned each other's hearts in snatched conversations and long looks across the trading ground, and had built, in secret, the kind of love that has nowhere to go, and so turns all the more fierce for being trapped. It was a painful love, a love that could see no future, because even when the peace was made, both their peoples would resist such a joining. They had talked about it, in their stolen moments, the impossibility of it, and had decided to hold on to what they had, and hope that the coming peace might, in time, soften the ground enough for them. And then, because Izel was a daughter of a respected family, close to the councils of her village, she overheard a thing she was never meant to hear, and the secret love that had been her private sorrow suddenly became the only thing standing between the Lakota people. She had come to love through one of them, and a massacre. What Izel overheard, in the nights before she fled, was treachery, and it came from the most powerful war voice in her own village, a man named Dichali. Dichali did not want the peace. He was a war leader of the old hard kind, a man who had lost much to the Lakota in the small clashes of the crowded borderland years, and who had built his standing on the promise of revenge, and a peace would take from Dichali the very thing his power rested on. So Dichali had made a plan, and Izel, moving unseen at the edge of the councils as a trusted daughter could, had overheard it. The plan was a betrayal of the deepest kind. Dichali and his faction meant to use the Peace Council itself as a trap. When the Lakota leaders came, unarmed and trusting, under the flag of truce, to make the peace, Dichali's warriors would fall on them and kill them, the leaders and the warriors who escorted them, all at once, breaking the back of the Lakota in a single treacherous stroke. It would not be war. It would be murder under a truce, the most dishonorable act a people could commit, and Dichali meant to do it and call it a victory. Izel had stood frozen in the dark, hearing it, understanding all at once what it meant. It meant the death of dozens of Lakota under a false peace. It meant the death of Tokala, the man she loved, who would surely be among the warriors escorting his leaders to the council. And it meant the poisoning of both peoples forever, because a betrayal like that does not end a war, it begins an endless one. And Izel had understood, standing in the dark, that she was the only person in the world who knew, and that knowing it made her responsible for it, and that doing anything about it would brand her a traitor to her own people, and might well get her killed by either side. She had a single terrible choice: stay silent and let the man she loved and dozens of others be murdered under a flag of truce, or run and warn them and lose everything: her people, her name, her place in the world, and very likely her life. Izel chose to run, and that is the kind of woman Izel was, and it is the whole reason this story is worth telling. She did not choose it easily. She sat awake the whole night after she overheard the plot, turning it over, and every road she could see led somewhere terrible. If she went to her own honest leaders, Dichali would deny it and brand her, and she had no proof. If she stayed silent, the man she loved and dozens of others would die under a false truce. If she ran to warn the Lakota, she became, in the eyes of everyone she had ever known, a faithless traitor who had sold her people for an enemy's bed. There was no road that did not cost her everything. So Izel chose the road that, whatever it cost her, might save the most lives, and she paid for that choice in full. And she paid it, knowing exactly what it would cost, before she ever climbed onto the stolen horse. When Izel reached the Lakota camp at dawn and gasped out her warning, she ran headlong into the exact problem she had feared. Almost no one wanted to believe her. Tokala believed her. That was the one mercy. He knew Izel, knew her heart, knew she was not a woman who would invent such a thing, and he saw in her gray, exhausted face that she was telling the truth. But Tokala was one warrior, and the warning was enormous, and the Lakota leaders who heard it did not have Tokala's reasons to trust an Apache woman who had appeared out of the dark on the eve of the peace. An Apache woman rides into our camp the night before the council, one of the Lakota leaders said, hard, and tells us the council is a trap, and that we should not go, or should come armed and ready for war. Think on what she asks us to do. She asks us to break the peace ourselves, to arrive at the council armed and suspicious, to insult the Apache who come in good faith. What better way to destroy the peace than to send a woman to make us distrust it? How do we know she is not the trap? How do we know Dichali, or someone, did not send her to make us ruin the very peace we came to make? It was a fair fear, and Izel had known it would be. From the outside, her warning was indistinguishable from a trick designed to wreck the peace. A woman who flees her people and tells the enemy not to trust the peace council looks exactly like a weapon aimed at the peace. The truth and the trap wore the same face, and Izel had no proof but her own word, and her own word was worth little, because everyone could see she was the secret lover of one of the Lakota warriors, which gave her every reason to lie for him, and no credibility at all. I have no proof, Izel said to the doubting Lakota leaders. I have only what I heard, and my word, and the fact that I have thrown away my entire life to bring it to you. Ask yourselves that, at least. What does a woman gain by branding herself a traitor to her own people and riding to her enemy's camp? I gain nothing. I lose everything. The only thing that buys is the chance that you live. That is the only reason a person does what I have done. Not to trick you, to save you. But I cannot make you believe me. I can only tell you the truth and let you choose. While the Lakota leaders argued over whether to believe her, the cost of Izel's choice was already coming due, because her own people had discovered her flight, and they had drawn the obvious, damning conclusion. In the Apache village, Izel was now a traitor twice over. She had fled to the enemy, which was shame enough. And worse, the war leader Dichali, the very man whose treachery she had fled to expose, understood at once what her flight must mean. He knew what she had likely overheard. He knew why she had run. And so Dichali moved fast to protect himself, and he did it by making Izel the villain before she could make him one. He told the village that Izel was a faithless woman who had betrayed her people for an enemy lover, and he sent word, even, that she had stolen secrets and carried lies to the Lakota to wreck the peace for her own shameful ends. It was a clever, vicious move. By branding Izel a traitor first, Dichali made her warning worthless even if it reached the right ears, because who believes the warning of a known traitor and enemy lover? He turned her truth into proof of her shame. The more loudly Izel told the truth, the more she looked like exactly what Dichali had painted her, a faithless woman, lying to serve her own betrayal. So Izel sat in the Lakota camp, branded a traitor by her own people, and distrusted by the people she had come to save, having paid the entire price of her choice already, her name, her family, her place in the world, all gone, with nothing yet bought by the paying. The man she loved believed her, no one else did. And the Peace Council was 2 days away, and dozens of lives, including Tokala's, hung on whether anyone would listen to a woman everyone had reason to call a liar. This is where Tokala became more than a secret lover, and where the story turns, because the Lakota warrior who loved her did the thing that love is actually for. He staked his own standing on her truth. Tokala went to his leaders, the men who had doubted Izel, and he did not argue that they should believe a strange Apache woman. He argued that they should believe him. You do not know Izel, Tokala said. You have every reason to doubt her, and I cannot fault you for it. So do not believe her. Believe me. You know me. You have ridden beside me. You know I am not a fool, and not easily tricked, and not a man who would risk this peace lightly. I tell you that I know this woman's heart better than I know my own, because I have spent 3 gatherings learning it, and I tell you on my own honor, which you do know and trust, that she is telling the truth. She has not come to trick us. She has come to save us, at the cost of everything she had. I will stake my honor on it. If she is lying, take my honor when it is proven. But do not walk our leaders into that council without at least preparing for the chance that she is right, because if she is right, and we do nothing, You will be burying men under a false peace, and you will have had the warning and ignored it. It was a powerful thing, a trusted warrior staking his own honor on a doubted woman's word. The Lakota leaders did not fully believe Izel even then, but they believed Tokala, or at least they believed that Tokala believed her, and that was enough to crack the door. We will not break the peace by arriving armed for war, the chief Lakota leader decided. That is what a trap would want of us, and we will not do it. But neither will we walk in blind. We will go to the council in good faith, as agreed, unarmed and open. And we will have warriors hidden, ready, near the council ground, who can move the instant treachery shows itself. If the Apache come in honest peace, those warriors never appear, and no insult is given. If they come to murder us under the truce, they will find we are not the easy lambs they expect. That is the road between trusting a stranger and ignoring a warning. We will walk it. The day of the Peace Council came, and it was the most dangerous day the borderland had seen, because two peoples gathered on one ground to make peace, and beneath the gathering ran a buried plot and a buried warning, neither of them visible on the calm surface. The Lakota leaders came to the council ground in good faith, unarmed, open, exactly as agreed, so that no Apache could say they had broken the truce. But hidden in the broken country near the council ground, unseen, Tokala and a band of chosen Lakota warriors waited, ready to move the instant treachery showed. It was a knife's edge. If the Apache came in true peace, the hidden warriors would stay hidden, and the peace would be made, and no one would ever know how close it had come. If Dichali sprang his trap, the hidden warriors were the only thing standing between the Lakota leaders and slaughter. Izel was there too, because she had insisted. She would not hide in the Lakota camp, while the thing she had given everything to prevent played out without her. She came to the council ground, in the open, the branded traitor, and her presence was itself a danger, because the moment her own people saw her among the Lakota, it would confirm every lie Dichali had told about her. The council began. The leaders of the two peoples sat at the great fire, and the careful words of peace began to pass between them. And for a while the calm surface held, and a watcher who knew nothing would have seen only two nations making peace. Izel's heart hammered through every measured word of it. She knew what the calm hid. She watched the Apache side the way a hawk watches grass, reading the small movements no one else would notice. A warrior drifting a few steps to the left, another loosening something at his belt, Dichali's eyes flicking again and again to the unarmed Lakota leaders and to the angles of escape. To everyone else, it was a peace council. To Izel, it was the last quiet minutes before a slaughter, and she sat on the edge of it, with the whole thing balanced on her nerve, waiting for the instant she would have to risk everything on a single shout. But Izel, watching, saw what others could not. She saw Dichali among the Apache, and she saw him watching the angles, positioning his men, waiting for the moment when the Lakota leaders would be most exposed, and the trap could close. She saw the treachery, coiling under the calm, invisible to everyone who did not already know it was there. And she understood that the moment was coming, and that when it came, it would come fast. When Dichali's moment came, and his men began to move, it was Izel who broke it open, the only way it could be broken, by standing up in the middle of the council and shouting the buried truth into the open air, where everyone, both peoples, had to hear it. Treachery, Izel screamed, surging to her feet in full view of both nations. Dichali means to murder the Lakota leaders, under the flag of truce. Look at his men. Look where they are moving. Look now, all of you, before it is too late. This is why I fled my village, not for a lover. To stop this. To stop a massacre under a false peace that would damn our people forever. Dichali, you wanted to call me a traitor. Here is your traitor, in the open, telling both peoples the truth you tried to bury under my shame. The council ground erupted. Dichali's men froze, exposed in the middle of their move, caught in the open by a warning shouted for everyone to hear. The Lakota leaders, warned now and watching, came to their feet, and from the broken country, Tokala and the hidden warriors rose, revealed, exactly positioned to stop the trap, so that Dichali saw in one instant that his treachery was known, was exposed, and was already countered. A massacre needs surprise. Izel had taken the surprise away, with a single scream of the truth, flung into the open air, in front of both nations, where it could never be unheard. One woman, branded a traitor, with no weapon but her voice, and no proof but her own ruined name, had reached into the half-second before the killing, and torn it open. Dichali's men, exposed and outmaneuvered, with the Lakota warned and ready, and their own treachery shouted into the open, in front of both nations, had lost the only weapon their plot depended on. And worse for Dichali, the Apache leaders themselves, the honest ones who had come to make a true peace, now understood that one of their own had meant to shame them all with a murder under a truce, and they turned on Dichali with a fury greater than any the Lakota felt, because he had tried to make their whole people into oath-breakers. It was the Apache peace leaders, in the end, who dealt with Dichali, and that was right, because a people must answer for their own. The honest Apache chief who had come to make the peace, an older man named Chial, faced Dichali across the council ground in front of both nations, and his anger was a cold and terrible thing. "You would have made every Apache here a murderer under a flag of truce," Chial said to Dichali. "You would have damned our name for all time, made our word worthless to every people forever, started a war without end, all to keep the power that peace would take from you, and you would have branded an honest daughter of our people a traitor to hide it. Look at her, Dichali. Izel fled in the night and threw away her whole life, her name, her family, everything, to stop the shame you meant to bring on all of us. She is no traitor. She is the only reason we are not, this very day, the most dishonored people on this earth. You are the traitor, not to the Lakota, to us, to your own." And Dichali, exposed in front of both nations, his plot shouted into the open, and his men disarmed by the revelation, found that he had no people left to stand with him. The honest Apache turned from him, his own faction, seeing the plot collapsed and the leaders against them, melted away, rather than die for a cause that was now only shame. Dichali was finished, not by the Lakota, but by his own people, who would not be made into oath-breakers for his ambition. And Izel, who had ridden into that council ground a branded traitor, stood vindicated in front of both nations, revealed at last as exactly what she was, the woman who had given everything to stop a massacre and save a peace. The peace was made that day, and it was a stronger peace for what had nearly broken it, because both nations had looked treachery in the face together, and turned from it together, and a peace forged in that kind of fire holds better than one made in easy times. And the truth of Izel's flight was known now, to both peoples, the real truth, and not Dichali's lie. She had not fled for a lover. She had fled to prevent a slaughter, at the cost of everything, and only Tokala had believed her when it counted, and his belief had been the crack through which the truth had finally come. "You knew," Izel said to Tokala, after, when the council ground had emptied and the peace was made. "When I rode in, and everyone else thought I was a trick or a shame, you knew. You staked your honor on me in front of your leaders. Why? You had as little proof as they did. I had all the proof I needed," Tokala said. "I had 3 gatherings of knowing your heart. I knew you were not a woman who would invent a massacre or betray your people for a man. I knew that if you said you had thrown your life away to save mine and my people's, it was because you had. The others needed proof because they did not know you. I did not need proof, Izel, because I knew you. That is what love is, in the end. It is knowing a person so well that you will stake your own honor on their word, when they have nothing else left to stand on. I did not believe you because I am wise. I believed you because I love you, and love had taught me exactly who you are. Izel and Tokala were married after that, and now there was no secret in it, because both peoples knew the whole truth, and a love that had been a hidden, painful, futureless thing was suddenly the honored symbol of a peace that two nations had nearly lost and had saved together. The Apache woman who had been branded a traitor became, instead, the most honored woman of that borderland, the one who had given up everything to prevent a betrayal, and whose love for a Lakota warrior had been not her shame, but, as it turned out, the very thing that made the warning believed in time. Without Tokala's love and his belief, Izel's warning would have died unheeded, and the massacre would have happened, and the endless war would have begun. The secret love that had seemed an impossible, doomed thing turned out to be the hinge the whole piece swung on. When Izel and Tokala were old, and the children of two peoples asked the old woman why she had fled her own village in the dead of night, branded a traitor, all those years before, Izel always told it the same way, and she always corrected the old lie first. They said I ran for a lover, Izel would say. That was the story, and it was easy to believe, because there was a lover, and I did love him, and I did run to his camp. But that is not why I ran. I ran because I had heard, in the dark, my own people's war leader planned to murder the Lakota under a flag of truce, and I was the only one who knew, and I could not let it happen. So I threw away my whole life to warn them, and almost no one believed me. Here the old woman would always reach for her husband's hand. Except this man, the one they all thought was the reason. He was not the reason I ran. He was the reason the running worked. He believed me when no one else would, and his belief is the only thing that let the truth come out in time. I gave up everything to carry a warning. He staked his honor to make it heard. Between the two of us, we saved a peace. Never let anyone tell you love is a soft thing, little ones. Love is what made him believe me, when believing me cost him everything. There is nothing soft about that. It started with a flight in the dark, and a woman branded a traitor, for a love everyone assumed was her reason. It ended with a massacre prevented, a treachery exposed, and a peace saved. And all of it turned on a buried truth, and the one man who loved her enough to believe it, when no one else would. If you stayed with Izel and Tokala all the way to the end of this story, then you already belong here, at this fire. Another story is lit and waiting. Stay close. The frontier is wide, and the truest tales of it are far from finished.